Hi, everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of the Crafty Folks podcast. I was going to have Crystal at Hook That Yarn with me today, and we actually recorded a podcast. It was like 2 hours long. It was really, really fun. It was really great. We laughed a ton. I got to full on witch cackle, which was really, really enjoyable. However, the way I recorded it, I got her audio perfectly. Our videos worked fine. And then when I looked back at the recording, my audio was non existent. And I was like, maybe I can try to like voice over. But turns out I can't because I just tend to ramble and talk about random stuff. So I have no idea what I was talking about and can't find that audio. So today we are just going to, I'm going to try to detangle this yarn some more. If you've been keeping track of some of my lives and stuff like that, you know that this yarn is yarn that I've been trying to detangle for a while. I made a lot of progress. I was like more than halfway through, and then it just became a big tangle again, everything that I had untangled. So we're trying again, and I'm gonna try to keep my cool and not be furiously mad at myself for making such a mess. And we're just gonna, unfortunately, whenever you deal with yarn as a fiber artist, part of the shtick is that sometimes the yarn will barf all over you. Now, this is yarn that I hand dyed. This is 100% cotton yarn, and it is in a trans pride colorway. So I used two different blues, two different pinks, and then I kept the white of the yarn that I bought to give some nice color variation. It's not self-striping. It's just, a variegated yarn that has the trans colors. And I do want to create other pride flag colors. That's the reason why I started this whole process of dyeing my own yarn, is because I was not very satisfied with the options of that existed out there in current uh, yarn variegations. So I am going to try to keep it a little bit more neat, i.e. balling up the excess. You can already see the trans variegation in there. I'm really happy with this, how it turned out. Still working, I got to work on ways to make it relatively consistent, dye lot over dye lot, so that we can make sure that whoever, if people ever bought this, or if I mean, I plan on using it regardless, but if I did start selling, I could create relatively consistent dye lots, so that people could order and get consistent results with what they want. And I've been told by many people who do frequently buy hand-dyed yarn that variations among dye lots and even within the same dye lot are kind of par for the course, but I still want something more consistent because I would hate to advertise this yarn as it looking one particular way and then it looks totally different. So I want to get some kind of consistency going. I know I'm not a machine, I'm not a factory, so getting dye lots exactly the same, or getting, pinks exactly the same isn't quite realistic, but I do think that I could do better. So that's going to take some practice. I do have some yarn that's ready to dye. I just need to figure out a way to set that whole thing up, because I need a better dyeing station than how I did it the first time. I got dye everywhere, everywhere, and like our kitchen counters are fairly light, and our sink is white. So washing out the dye, splattering yarn or splattering dye different places was pretty noticeable. So I kind of have to figure out my configuration a little bit more. If you yourself, or you've seen some dyeing videos of different dye setups that can be managed without much trouble, that would be great. I love advice. Do I? I don't know. But you know, it would be really it would be really cool to have some better dye options. Now, the thing with cotton, as opposed to a protein based fiber, natural fiber like wool, is that when you dye it, you do not need heat to set the colors. And because I'm doing variegation, I couldn't just do a big pot and just dip the whole thing in there. I would need kind of a different setup where I'd have like a pan that offered a little bit of drainage so that, you know, when I flip things, they don't just sit and die, especially due to the fact that a lot of the pride flag color, or some of the pride flag colors, do contain white, and I want to make sure that those spots remain undyed. So I did find a pan that I think will be perfect for it, but I need some space and some good. Uh, you know, I just need to figure out a way to dye it where I don't create the world's biggest mess, because the dyeing process took a while. Um, Letting things dry appropriately, and all of that took a while. And I need to make sure that I have not only space to do it, but space to let things dry and, um, you know, whatnot. Now, this particular dye, I believe, I want to say it takes like 12 to 24 hours that they want you to let um, it sit in the dye, or with the dye on the fiber. So, sorry, I'm very messy. I don't know if you knew this or not, but I am quite messy. Um, and So, you know, needing space to do that, making sure that it's in a place that is like low odor, um, like my parents have a decently sized garage, but it smells like motor oil in there. So, like, I don't know if that would be the place for me to dye my yarn, because I don't want my yarn to come out smelling like motor oil and things that may also be in the garage. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, with in the dyeing process. Is I haven't done any more dyeing since I dyed the four hanks of yarn that I did dye. I dyed them in two separate lots. They ended up looking fairly different, and just trying to get the color right was important. Like I said, the fact that this doesn't need heat, so technically you can dye cotton yarn with just regular tie-dye, like a regular tie-dye kit. You know, it's made for cotton shirts and whatever you tie-dye. So you know, it's fairly easy to use. It is a little bit hard to make sure your proportions are consistent, but once I get better at dyeing and I go through the kit that I bought, I want to invest in better dyes so that I can like measure everything out very evenly, make sure I get my water amount, like the kind of uh how do I want to put it, like the concentrations to be consistent, and then also just like my dyeing process to be consistent. Once I get there, I do want to invest in some better, not better, but just like more quantities of the dye that I desire to get, because it's important. So I, instead of just like keeping it all unwound to some degree, I'm trying to wind it up as I go. This might make it a little bit hard to detangle, and get through some of like the tighter um, tangles and whatnot, but it'll probably be helpful once I get to um, the point that I got to last time, where I was like more than halfway done, and then like all of a sudden everything was a tangle because I didn't know which string to pull. And maybe that sounds stupid, but I put a lot of work into untangling this, and to have to start over again kind of makes me want to just jump off a cliff. Ha ha ha, jumping off cliffs. But yeah, so I'm restarting this. and I'm hoping it will be a little bit easier, at least for the stuff that I had already done, because it had primarily been untangled already. Now, the second part of this, all bets are off. We have no idea how that's going to go, but hopefully this part will be a little bit easier. Um, that's just kind of what I wanted to talk about with this podcast, is all things crafty, whether it's yarn dyeing, yarn spinning, like I know Crystal does, um, things like that. I just really want to embrace all sides of being crafty, because so many of us, when we're crafty folks, we don't just stick to one craft. Some of us do, and that's totally fine. My primary like mode of crafting now is crocheting, but that doesn't mean I don't dip into watercolors and other types of things. So I just want to, create a space where like we can be crafting just about anything, and all of that is okay, and we can all talk about it regardless of what tools and mediums we use. We can just talk about being crafty, but also chit chat and just have a good time. I can tell you a little bit about what Crystal and I did on what we recorded. I might use some bits of Crystal's audio as I like, not to say that what Crystal said was a blooper, but because I don't have like my conversation piece back to her, I might just do like a outtakes reel or something like that, or bloopers reel, where we can just talk about things. But one of the things that I had originally thought would be really fun was to do, like, start every podcast, starting with this episode, with a BuzzFeed quiz, or just like some kind of quiz, just silly, kind of goofy thing that would be a conversation kickoff topic. So Crystal and I did a quiz, which I will link in the description. And we talked about it. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see our results, or, my results. I could post just Crystal's, but basically, it was a BuzzFeed quiz that was like a yes or no quiz to like see if you were a weirdo, which I thought was on brand, because that's the name of this whole thing, right? Um, and I thought it would be fun to just ensure that we were both weirdos, even though I don't think there's a doubt in either of our minds that we are. Um, and weirdo, I think for both of us and a lot of us, is something that we kind of wear as a badge of honor. It's not like, growing up when you're called weird, it's often a negative connotation, where like, you're weird and you're different, so that means like no one will like you or whatever. Like, being weird where we are at this stages in our at these stages in our life, or this stage in our lives, I don't know. I'm bad at talking. You all should know that by now. But being called a weirdo, I kind of take as a badge of honor and pride. Like, yeah, I'm weird, I'm different, and I'm totally okay with that. I kind of love it. In fact, it's something that brings me a lot of joy, because then when I create things, when I do things, and maybe they're unconventional or strange or weird, it's like, who cares? So there were a lot of questions in this quiz. I want to ballpark and say like 25 questions, but we like commented and like talked to each other about each question, and we had a really good time. And oh my gosh, I laughed so hard. Crystal is like, and so many of you we're just on the same wavelength, where we can like talk about stuff, and we can giggle about just how silly we are, and we just have a good time. And that's what I really want, is just to further this sense of community that we have on this page, about embracing just kind of like the weird sides of us, and um, being able to be happy that we're different and embrace our differences. And even if you don't create quote unquote weird items like I do, it doesn't make you any less of a weirdo if you want to identify that way. It just means that like you can just talk how you want to talk, be how you want to be, and you can be that in this place without judgment. And I think that is what I was looking for in a community on YouTube. And not that the people that I was around were making me feel weird, but I was creating a lot of different things than the people around me. And, for me, I did feel like a bit of an outcast. I kind of always felt like an outcast. I mean, if you know me, you know that if the shoe fits, the clown shoe fits. Um, so that's kind of what why I so strongly was like excited and adamant about owning this weirdness that I had in me, because I didn't feel the need to conform to anyone's idea of what I should make because I did crochet, or because I whatever, like I didn't feel the need anymore to try to make content that people thought was like what a crocheter should make. And this is no shade, like, whatsoever to people who do make stuff like that. If you make more traditional items, you make doilies, you make blankets, you make dolls, like whatever you make granny squares. Or even if you're just learning how to crochet, or you're new to a certain type of craft, if you want to make something that's more traditional in that context, then like you should feel free to be able to do so without judgment. And in fact, like, people should just be able to see your art for what it is, which is just a creative outlet for you to kind of let your freak flag fly. Sometimes that's so hard for me, so I have to kind of like like freak flag flag. Um, I wanted to create a community like that, and I feel like I've really cultivated like a group of friends who we all support each other. And like, someone can come up on the panel, or we can be talking in the chat, and someone will ask like, what are you making? And there's nothing that someone will say where I'm like, that's fucking strange. But like, I felt like that when I would go up on other people's panels when I was, kind of first getting into my YouTube channel. Not that anyone made me feel this way, I just felt this way myself. Was, people would be like, what are you making? Blank and blank. And like, they would be like, I'm making a blanket, or I'm making an Afghan, which is a blanket, or I'm making a cardigan. And then they'd be like, Ian, what are you making? And I'm like, I'm making a voodoo doll to put my hooks in. And like, it's just kind of like a different vibe once you announce that to everyone else who's making, again, more traditional items. And so, for me, it's great to see what everyone makes, kind of regardless of what they're making, just to see like the different types of um, artistry that we can all bring to the same art form, or just crafts in general. And I didn't want this to be just about crochet. I wanted people who were in the fiber arts community, regardless of how they used it, or people who like to paint, or do diamond art, or literally anything. I wanted them to be able to come in and feel like, yeah, I can identify with that. Oh my gosh, I hate when my embroidery floss gets tangled. Or like, oh, what happens when like I have all of these, I have like a box of diamonds for diamond art, and then the box falls and the lids all pop open, and then all my different colors are mixed. I feel like that's something that we can all relate to, whether or not we do that specific craft or not. And that's why this is the crafty folks, not the crochet folks, or anything like that. And I personally love podcasts, but I know that I don't really love just listening to them. Now, this podcast is available on Podbean, and I believe Podbean puts it on Apple Music, so that you could just listen to it if you want to just listen and craft along with us. Or there's a video component, because I know, me being the ADHD monster that I am, I need something to fulfill like all the senses at once, um, so that I don't get distracted, and not be able to complete whatever I'm doing. And so I like video podcasts personally, just because they're easier for me to actually pay attention to. but if I'm listening to just the audio of a podcast, one, sometimes people aren't explaining what they're doing or the facial expressions that they're making, and it makes it harder for me to understand why people are reacting a certain way. Um, for those of you who don't know, this is not my first podcast. I, for a little while, off and on, did a podcast called Mentally Chill, which I ended up being a little bit ironic in the name, because I wanted it to be a play on mentally ill, but like, but I think a lot of people took it as like, what does it take to be mentally chill? And I was like, well, that's not really what I intended. But, sometimes you can intend one thing and have something completely different come out of it. And that was cool too. And so I had the pleasure of having several of my friends help me along with that podcast at two distinct points. And even had a couple episodes that had Mel in it. And granted, that was all, well, the first part with that Mel did sometimes show up for, um, uh, was, um, was all audio. There was no video component. Um, but I know a lot of people like podcasts and just like the audio component so that there's no visual distraction for them. I think different strokes for different folks. I'm totally okay with that. But I know for me, visually, the visual aspect of the podcast is better. I just like looked and like I'm wearing my Beetlejuice shirt, and like if I just like sit like this, all you see is his face being smug and very Beetlejuicy, um, and it's pretty funny to look at if I am being totally honest. Uh, but uh, but yeah, I feel like I can relate to that face a lot. Uh, and whoever I just like one day there will be untangleable yarn, and best believe I'm gonna be the first in line for that yarn. I'll even pay full price for it because I do not like yarn tangles. Some people find a lot of joy from untangling yarn. If you are one of those people, please let me know. Um, I know some people are like, just give me, I want to untangle the yarn. And it's very soothing for them, and that's awesome. I mean, if it's soothing for you, who am I to stop you, right? But but I am not one of those people. I do not enjoy detangling yarn. It makes me furious. It makes me want to just throw it into a fire and like just cast it into the flames of hell itself, and call it a day. I'm like, it's just not worth it. But because this is hand-dyed yarn, I do want to see how it works up. It's really hard to tell how yarn will work up when it's, in a ball like this. So I really want to be able to work it up. But because I did not watch one single yarn dyeing video other than like what dyes work for this yarn. Other than that, I didn't really do any research, and so I didn't look at how to like knot up your paint good or appropriately or anything like that, and I really am suffering the consequences. But that's just how it be sometimes, and we live and we learn, and that's just what it is. But okay, now we're getting to the meat and taters of it. This is what's left. This is what I've pulled out thus far. I'm really, it was cool to see the yarn dyeing process and also to see how things turned out. I can't wait to see how it works up, to see if it works out to be kind of like the yarn of my dreams, or if I need to adjust certain color levels to be more prominent. Certain dyes are just easier, like to penetrate the yarn fibers than others. So it would be, it's important to kind of do a swatch of the the yarn itself to kind of see how the variegation turns out. But that is all part of the process, my dears. If in the comments you want to tell me what you're working on, of course, like I said, there's no judgment. Um, but I'm always really interested to see what other people are working on, because I think that that is like so much of my inspiration as a crocheter, is to just see what other people are working on. Because maybe I want to work on something, maybe I want to work on the same exact project. They're working on a pattern. I'm like, that looks really cool. Let me see if I can, do that pattern too. And then sometimes it gives me inspiration for something completely different, but it's still really awesome to be able to see and hear what other people are making, how they're making it, how they're using yarn of certain colorways and different types of yarn. Because, I've made a couple videos about not knowing how to use certain types of yarn, because some, like, even like variegated yarn, like I'm making, can be very intimidating for me to use, because I don't want to use this beautiful variegation and then find out that it looks like garbage when I work it up, because I I didn't use the yarn in a way that highlighted the color changes and stuff. So if you ever want to show off some of your work, I always like to encourage people to look into Army of Weirdos. Army of Weirdos is a Facebook group. I know not everyone has a Facebook, but if you do have a Facebook and you would like to share your work, Army of Weirdos, I don't even know the name of my own Facebook page, is a Facebook page that you can, and it's a cool group of people. Everyone's really nice, and people can show off their work. And no matter what you're working on, you're going to get a lot of support. People I've always seen friendliness and openness to different projects, no matter what type of project they were. I love seeing people who are newer to crochet or fiber arts come in and show them making progress from the first chains that they make or first stitches they cast on, to what they are finally able to make, and the progress that they're able to make in that craft. But any kind of art that you do, Army of Weirdos can be a great place for it. So if you would like to check that out, I'm definitely not going to purposefully dissuade you from checking that out. I just it's an option, but no pressure, as always, because I feel like there's enough pressure in the world to do whatever, and I don't want to add to that for anyone else. I feel like we should all just be able to create and have fun and joke around, and we can share different patterns that we find, and things like that. And it's always just really, really fun and nice to do. Um, and it's just really interesting. I find myself constantly being inspired by the folks of Army of Weirdos, to keep creating. And even if I'm just having a bad day and I just I'm like, this day blows, and just need people to talk to, it's a great place for that as well. Because while obviously we do talk about crafts quite a bit, we also talk about mental health. We talk about politics, and to a light level, and it's just a really positive place where people can share their opinions and their projects and their progress, their setbacks, whatever, and or ask questions. Hey, do you think this would look better? This would look better, and get feedback. I feel like feedback. Sometimes we all get stuck in our heads, and we are unsure about what move to make next. And it's a great place to bounce ideas off of people, and that's what I wanted. So it's nice that came to fruition in a place that I feel personally good about. And I hope and think that a lot of the people in Army of Weirdos feel the same way, where they can just kind of share what they like to do. And also, I feel like I've made a lot of great friends there, and people that I really trust and can go to when I'm struggling, whether it be with crafts or with life. And I've just made really good friends there. So I can't speak highly enough of that group. Maybe it's a selfish move on my part, because it is my group, but it's not about me. It's about just kind of the greater community and a sense of friendship and camaraderie that we can all have, no matter what we're doing, no matter what we're working on, and that's awesome. I think I'm really proud of everyone who's in the group, who interacts with the group. Even if you don't interact, but you just see things as you're scrolling through your Facebook, that's totally fine. I think that's a perfectly adequate way to interact with the Facebook page if you want, or group. You know, it's not a big deal. Like, there's just not a lot of pressure to do things. And oftentimes, if I'm doing something like, let's say I posted a video that I feel really passionately about that I really want to share with people, I'll be like, hey, everyone, I posted this video. I don't know if a lot of people have seen it. Actually, I do know if a lot of people have seen it. I do get analytics on shit, but I'm like, this is really important to me. I would really like if you could all watch it. And it's been a way for me to communicate, you know, getting the information that I want to get out there. And I want other people who create content and who craft to be able to have that same outlet. It's not, I think I spilled some on myself. Oops. Surprised it took me that long, frankly. Trying to talk and drink at the same time. Not great at multitasking in the first place, why I thought that would be a great idea. You may never know. But yeah, so I really want this podcast to be more than just me talking to myself, but I know sometimes that's just gonna be how it is, and that's fine, as long as it encourages dialogue in the community that we have here. I think that would be ideal for me. But I would, love to see other people on this podcast. I know Crystal has expressed buy-in into the idea, and she's also put her money where her mouth is, by showing up, and so I'm very grateful to have had the podcast that I did have with Crystal, even though most of you will never see it because of my audio issues, and I really apologize for that because it was such a good one. I hate to rub it in your face, but you missed something good, and you had no choice in the matter. Sorry. But yeah, if you wanted to be a part of this, I don't want you to feel like you have to be an expert in any type of craft or anything like that to want to participate. I want this to be kind of like, our little podcast family. Gotta love testosterone. Second puberty is awesome. And yeah, so I think that for me, podcasting is just like such a nice way. Also, I made a video. I never posted it. I don't think I will. About how I just don't think that lives are going to be the move for me right now. Just kind of being in the mental space that I'm in right now, it is really challenging to be kind of on my feet and performing, when I'm in a place like that, because I don't take, I take criticism to a lot of things very personally in times like this, and I don't want to put the pressure on anyone else to feel like they have to walk on eggshells around me to make sure that I'm okay and stuff like that. I want people to be able to express themselves freely as long as they're not being blatant assholes, which sometimes people are, and that's the internet for you. Surprise. And so I want people to be able to come in and be able to voice their opinions and be able to feel like they can freely disagree with something I said or whatever, without feeling like, oh, we got to worry about Ian's feelings because Ian's in his feelings again and shit like that. That's not my style. Generally, that's not what I want for other people. I don't want to put pressure on other people to feel like they have to behave or anything a certain way, or they can't voice their opinions because I'm a sensitive little bitch. And so that's part of the reason why I'm not planning on doing any lives anytime soon, because I just find it very difficult to do because you just never know what's going to pop up in live. And you really have to be quick on your feet. And I feel like usually I'm pretty good at that. But right now I'm not. And I just don't take a lot of either constructive feedback or just blatantly like shitty feedback, I guess is the best way I can put it. Um, I don't take that well. And I'm not taking that well right now. And for me, it's. I just like I want to be able to have like a safe space, and if I'm part of the reason that this has not become a safe space, I'm gonna step back and let things cool off until we're at a better place in time. So right now I'm kind of getting to this part. This is how much I've done. I don't even know proportions of how much I've done. You can see that this lot ended up very blue. There are definitely pink and white accents, but this was my first time around, and my first lot, and I didn't use the pink as much as I feel like I wanted to. So that's one of the reasons why I need to work on consistency, is because you should be able to see a hank or something worked up and be like, I can see why I can use that. And then when you get the hank, it should work like you expected. So yeah, my muscles are like, no, bitch. You thought you could do a whole hank in one sitting? You're wrong. You are old and you are decrepit, and your body will suffer. That's what my body is saying right now. For those of you interested, I'm still working on this blasted hand that I'm working on for the doll that I'm making. I'm still kind of hesitant to show it because there's still so much progress to be made and patterns to be written and whatnot, that I still like a little secretive, because I am making. If you know the reference, it's a very recognizable. Sorry, it's a very recognizable character if you know the character. So the minute that I show it, I didn't want to show it too early and then have someone who is better at crocheting and faster at crocheting, faster at writing patterns, be able to just swoop in and take it. So maybe that's me being a little paranoid. Who knows? So that's why I'm not showing it, and I hate to be like a tease. I don't think I've ever done that with another project where I've been like, I'm not going to show it, but I'm going to talk about it all the time, because I find that fiercely annoying. But most people aren't as slow at crocheting as me, so they might say, I'm working on something, give a little hint, and then a week later they have it ready. This is like years in the making. So I just kind of want to be I'm being a little bit of a protective parent about it. I can fully admit that, it's probably very annoying, but I just want it to be, I want to present one of the most complicated things I've ever made personally, in a way where like I can reveal it and not feel like the the ground was ripped out from underneath me because I didn't release the pattern um, fast enough or good enough, and someone came in and made it better and cooler and whatever than I did. So that's kind of the reason why I'm being as uh, annoying as I am. So apologies, but it is what it is. This is such a nightmare. So you can tell that this is the part that I had not gotten to yet. It is just one big mess. This is a 4-weight cotton. It's actually Lily Peaches and Cream. And I bought a cone which is 400 yards, I believe. No, wait, it's 400 grams. And I broke it up into 100 hanks, and then that's where I did my dyeing. And then because the pan I was using to do the dyeing was so small, I could only do 2 at a time. So that's why I have 2 dye lots that just have 2 hanks each. I know that it would be more ideal, vastly more ideal, if I got undyed cotton from a yarn dyeing supplier and then dyed that. But due to the nature of me wanting to create pride flag colors specifically, and the fact that a lot of them have white in them. I did need white yarn, and a lot of the undyed cotton was not white. It was like a cream color, and it just, to me, I wanted to see if the white, if I could dye, a store-bought yarn that was white and maintain some of that white to create the white of the flags. I feel like if I say white one more time, I'm gonna get like on a watch list. But then I said it, so oops. Yes. So yeah. One thing I do have sitting on my desk that I have not addressed. It was when I was cleaning a lot in here. Is I found some beads that I bought on sale at Joann quite a while ago, and I kind of lost them in the mix of all of this stuff. Again, crafts. It's just what happens. Unfortunately, sometimes we buy stuff and then immediately lose it. So I bought some beads that I really, at first I was thinking I might make stitch markers for. And I know a lot of people make stitch markers, and they're so cool. But for me personally, I prefer locking stitch markers that don't really get in my way. So a lot of these would get in the way. So these are my favorite. These are pumpkin jack-o'-lantern beads. And then I have candy corn glass beads. Very gorgeous. And they were on a really good sale. It was like buy one, get 3 free. So I was like, okay, done. And then I got these 2 clay fruit ones. Some are watermelons and slices, and some of them are lemon slices. And they're very, very, very cute. Showing the camera for those of you who are just listening. And they're very, very cute. And at first I was going to make stitch markers, but I think I might use them to put in fidget toys, because I think that would be really cool to have like some kind of like additional component. I've seen people use things like pony beads and stuff in fidget toys, and they've been really cool. So I really want to make sure, or I really want to try to put some of them, like imagine like a fidget toy that had like a little jack-o'-lantern in the middle. Like you'd probably die from cuteness, right? I know I would. So, Halloween is very on brand for me, but I also like just the fruit was really calling to me. It was just too cute to pass up, especially with that good of a deal, because beads are expensive. If you've ever beaded anything in your whole life, you know that beads are outrageously expensive. And that's because a lot of them are handmade. And so there's a reason why they're so expensive, but I, totally feel for people who do a lot of like woven beadwork and stuff like that. I used to do that, and it is just a unfortunately very expensive hobby and craft, just due to the nature of the cost of beads themselves, and then all of the findings and things that you have to do to get them to be like you want them to be. So when I saw a really good deal on beads, I was like, let me check it out. But I don't do bead weaving anymore. That's another craft that I did for a long time, but I'm so slow at it that I could never, ever even pretend to recoup my time costs for it, because it is just outrageous how long things take me to do. And I'm just not that good at it. I'm I can get by with what I did, but I just wasn't good enough at it to be creative and make patterns and stuff like that. I wasn't even good enough to like do anything without a pattern. So if I wanted to do something, I would make it for me or my mom or like family members, but I never really pursued it past that because I just knew that there was no way that I could compete with like something that was um, someone could easily buy on the internet. Granted, the internet was not what it was when I was beading that it is now, but I definitely can't do it now. And there are people who are so good at it. I let them do it. Um, and we can try crafts and we can enjoy making things for ourselves and other people, even if we're not the fastest, we can't do it the most economically, blah 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 blah. All of that is still very totally okay. There's like sometimes it's like, if we're kind of raised that like if you don't do something that has like monetary value like return, that you shouldn't do it. I know personally I was. And so some of the things that I do, just they don't have a whole lot of like monetary or like selling value. And that doesn't mean that they weren't worth it or fun to do or I didn't enjoy it. It didn't bring me some kind of like mental state of happiness. And if you do crafts like that, then, if you don't want to sell the things you make, there should be no pressure to um, sell things. And if you just enjoy making them and then using them yourself or just having them around, and I think that that's a very valid standpoint to have as a crafter is, hey, I spent a lot of time making this. I'm not, I might like giving gifts or something, but I don't really want to sorry, I'm very burpy. But I don't want to make this to sell, and I don't want to even attempt to try to like produce it on a larger scale. Totally okay. I just think like that for a lot of my things because part of the reason why is because I started to kind of build up a collection of things that I had just made randomly. And I was like, now they just sit in my house and I don't really like have all the space to just fucking have things all the time. So I was like, well, if I still want to craft, but I want to start getting rid of some of this stuff, well, it's either going to all have to be gifts, which I'm sure a lot of people in my life are tired of getting, crocheted items every year instead of like, maybe something that they want specifically. So, but there's just like, I mean, intrinsic value in a lot of handmade items, because a lot of like love is poured into every single component of it. Like this, from like me trying to conquer like agoraphobia and get out and buy the yarn and the dye and all of that to me learning how to dye the yarn and then me finally making something that I couldn't find out there. For me, that has intrinsic value that maybe people will see, maybe people won't. I've thought about selling this once I get better at it, but if no one ever buys it, at least I'll have yarn that I want and can use and can keep. So, um, I think that that's for me a big part of it is just wanting to, just make stuff that brings me joy. But in some instances, I'm like, you know what, like I want to make this to sell an item. So, that does require a different kind of frame of mind. I think if you're like, okay, well, what are people looking for? What do people want? How am I gonna draw people? For me, it's like, how do I draw people to my Etsy store when I just make weird stuff that nobody asked for? Like maybe people would be really interested in it if they could find it, but good luck like searching for something, like putting in the right search words for something that's like totally random and weird. So, it can be a little difficult, but I'm happy with what I'm making right now. If I really wanted to, I could change what I make to be more marketable and the things that everybody seems to want. But for me, that's just not what brings me joy. And a lot of the times, the reason we craft primarily is to bring us joy. And if we have to make the same thing, for me, making the same thing over and over again doesn't bring me a whole lot of joy. But like for my packers, I've sold over 100 of them, which is great, and I'm very happy with that. But like when I have to make a pattern, I'm like, ugh, a packer. I'm like, nah. But then when I get to see that people really enjoyed the packer that they received, and it made them very happy, it made them, it helped them experience that gender euphoria, which is a gift that I want. I feel like every person deserves to feel comfortable in their own skin and whatnot. That's a really that's an amazing gift for me. It makes all of that like, oh, I gotta make this freaking pattern again. It makes me go, man, it's worth it. It's worth it to be able to like put a smile on someone's face and make someone feel a little bit more comfortable in their skin. Like, why would I do anything different? But I do want to make other things because I like the challenge and the joy of making different items and exploring my skills and furthering my skills. I don't typically do like things like New Year's resolutions and things like that. New Year's revolutions, totally different. But last year I made it a big goal of mine to become a better crocheter, and part of that process for me was starting to write patterns and starting to be more creative in the making of items, because that allowed me to really stretch my wings and to test how well I could crochet. And not everyone's gonna want to write patterns. Pattern writing is a pain in the ass, not gonna lie. So I understand if that's not everyone's cup of tea, but finding your cup of tea is amazing. So that's what I hope for everyone watching and listening to this podcast is find what makes you happy. If you're not hurting anyone else or yourself, then what's the harm in finding something that just brings you joy? I mean, to me, that's such an amazing gift that we can give ourselves, is to find our passion in this life, and no matter what that may be, it's important. So that's that's a good point to end on. So thank you so much for watching episode 2 of the Crafty Folks podcast, or listening to it. If you want to leave a review, or if you want to comment below on the YouTube video, anything like that, please feel free. If you want to be on the podcast, there's no pressure. But if you would like to be, I would love to have you on. You can show what you're making. You can just chit chat with me. We can talk about silly items. We can talk about serious items. I don't care. I do not want this podcast to have a lot of structure to it. I just want it to be whatever it is and just kind of flow naturally, because that's my vibe. I don't need a lot of structure in things, and things like this. I prefer so much more when they're free flowing and just conversational and relaxed. So I hope you have a great day, no matter where you are, and when you're listening / watching this. And I will talk to you very soon. Have a great day or night. And yeah, talk to you later.